Hi there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Review, the Worldwide TV Network, Women on TV.tv, and iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. So this is a retro show. We're going back into time because these guys decided to re-release, newly digitally remastered. I have to say that part. That's adorable. All right, let's talk about this. Neil, talk about who you are and where you came from.
That's you, Neil. That's your cue.
So it'll be a little surreal. I'm not quite sure I am on a delay, but we'll make it work.
But that's okay. Talk about what's your profession, where you came from, how long you been in the business for?
If we're starting with me, I'm Neil Cohen. I'm a writer and the producer and sometimes director for Examen 10 and Queen, New York. And I'm having some fun talking to you, Sebastian.
You got a little delay, but I'll work with that. Zach, talk about, all right, Zach, I recognize your face. Who are you? Where you coming from? Because you've been around for a long time, too.
Long time, a very long time. I made my television debut in 1952. My real name is Howard Zucker. So Howard Zucker, in most cases, becomes eventually Zack Norman. Doesn't that make sense?
Well, it also goes back to those. It also goes back to those days when performers would change their name.
They all did in those days, and now you have people like Frank Lovejoy, who didn't change his name. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Thank you. At any rate, I was 52. My first television show, Howie Zucker and his Music Makers. I was a drummer and had my own band. And then I went off and got into comedy, because playing in the drums, I would watch a guy come to the front of the band and everybody loved him. The girls loved him, and he got paid much more money than I did. So for a few years, I was a comedian. And as a comedian, I traveled with the Temptations and the Four Tops, did the Johnny Carson show, and did some real estate. And then I became, from there, real estate taught me how to fund and make movies economically. Comedy taught me how to act. So therefore, I became a producer and an actor. That's my story.
Well, so
and
here's
all
the thing.
Time, I kept getting older.
So Zach, here's the thing on that. First of all, us drummers bang harder because it's all about the drummers, right? And then second of all, when you can perform with the Temptations and the Tops, it goes back to the Funk Brothers. I know you know of the Funk Brothers who recorded on all the Motown classics. How do I know that? Because I interviewed all of them.
Oh, wow. That's great.
That's why I ask for people's backgrounds, because it's what happens is people don't realize they recognize the faces, but they don't always realize where everybody came from. So we have to always keep you guys who are icons relevant. Right, Neil?
That's great.
Yeah, now I want to talk less about me and more about the Funk Brothers. I mean, would they have fun memories of that period? Did they have annoyed memories? Where were they at?
Well, the thing about them, it was one of the things iconic and classic. I mean, imagine this. We can go into the world-class Wrecking Crew in Los Angeles, and you can go into the Funk Brothers in Detroit, Michigan. And it also goes back to, you talked about the Comedy Store, Zach. Well, you guys put the Comedy Store. You put the Comedy Store in your movie. And the thing about that is there's the history on the Comedy Club in Hollywood through Showtime now, which is really good. So going into your movie is a great segue into this. You guys directed this back then. Why are you releasing it now? And there was a bunch of funny things in it, because I was laughing at when I was talking about it. I'm thinking of the sex scene with the girl in the bed. I'm thinking of that
hasn't changed so much, you know.
Well, yes, exactly. About how you guys put that together and why it's relevant now. Because funny is still funny.
Zach, why don't you take them, baby?
What was that? I didn't hear the last thing.
Zach, jump into this one.
Oh, you're
I
talking
am
about
doing
sex,
it
so you
now.
asked me to drop in. Well, all we did, because we wrote this great piece together, is we used a part of our personal lives, of course, but we were really, the overview was this guy in the 80s who had just finished building the biggest building that I know of at the time. And I'm not talking about a classical building like the Empire State Building, but the biggest building, the most active building was the Trump Tower. So we
Right.
found a guy who was a great actor, and he became our Trump character. In those days, having no idea in a million years that this man would ever become the president of the United States. So he continued on, and we were very happy with the picture in those days. And unfortunately, 1 week before we opened our picture, the distributor went into bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
And man, we just sat there, and I mean literally sat there for like 3 years waiting for it to get out of litigation so we could go off and show our picture to people. P.S. It never did. So Neil went his way, I went mine, always in touch. And that's the genesis of this picture. It was only 30 years later, literally, that Neil and I were having a bite together, and it happened to coincide with the same day, July 16th, I think it was, in 2015, when Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president of the United States. Have I taken us to the date, Neil?
Yes, absolutely. Neil? And then we said to each other, we made a movie about a New York real estate developer who wants to go to politics. So why don't we go find that movie and take a look what it looks like? We did, and we were delighted to see what we created some 30 years earlier. And we made a couple of cuts, edited, pulled out some time of stuff we didn't like after 30 years of maturity, deciding what was good and what was good, and put it out to the public, and people seemed to dig it.
Well, I hope nobody heard what I heard, because I didn't hear all your words. I assume and hope that the people heard all the words, but we did. I got the feeling that it was all right. We had a different perspective. We had to go and look for this lost negative at that time, and we found it under a stairwell in my basement. And we looked at this picture, and we loved it, except for a number of things we didn't love 30 years later. And it was the greatest joy that I can think of having, is we recut the picture. And we were both happy. I don't think we had one problem, did we, Neil, in terms of what we liked or didn't like?
No.
So here we did this picture. It was too late to really open it for the election, but we do have, and it's in the picture, the night before the election, we were at a film festival in Fort Lauderdale, and they were so wonderful and happy that there was a picture actually done about Donald Trump, still not believing that he would become the president, and he did, as you know.
We'll talk about this, Neil and Doc, because I'm going to go Neil first on this one. We don't have, in the New York and Los Angeles market, we don't have theaters open. Some of them are coming back slowly but surely, and we don't have film festivals because they're virtual. Talk about how do you get your film out now, and where do you see film festivals? Because I've been working with a lot of film festivals on what's not going on. How do you two see this?
Yeah, well, what our plan was going into 2020 was we had set up a tour of comedy clubs, and we were going to play the movie in comedy clubs. We were going to do a funny little introduction, play the movie, and then have comedy in it, which we tried a couple of clubs, and it was great. Of course, the COVID too long, and shut all of that. So I put together this release on video on demand on Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, and Google. And what we're finding is more people to move that way than we have been doing a barnstorming for around the country. I really produced a small experimental film and dealing with film festivals. And all those festivals have done virtual. It's a festival in New York, which is there, and then people can actually see movie. So this whole period festivals that able to come up with sort of unique version virtual festival will get back again. People will be sitting in their, or they'll be sitting in their cars watching it live driving. They're doing festivals from the country, or they're watching it one with a big screen put up nights where it's kind of a way to experience watching films. Now, unfortunately, I'm always too optimistic of everything, so we're doing okay. But the first half being and at the town that hosts these schools, and a lot of us small towns, more, and a lot of people there to talk film and go to all this restaurant. And so we're there.
Hey, Zach,
and a lot of people.
you're
Yeah.
laughing.
So I'm glad.
I hope you're hearing Neil better than I am.
No, I'm not. Neil, I can hear.
You're not.
I think turn down your volume because it's echoing back.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Because you're coming
Okay.
out choppy. But Zach, let me ask you this. Let me ask you the same question.
Please.
He was talking about virtual, what you guys were doing in the film festival when you guys were showing it. Give your point of view of that. And what you think of what the movies will be.
What we did is something that was really right up my alley and his. We had a great time because we started to play little theaters and nightclubs. And we would take this picture and we would have an opening which told the history of the picture, as we're doing now, how we made it in 1986. And I just lost the visual here. I don't know if you did, but I'll press a button, I guess, to get it back. I don't know. Yeah,
There you are. You're back.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, in case the people are seeing me incorrectly, I have a full head of hair. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
That's right.
You know, and the funny thing about that,
Yeah.
the funny thing about that, Neil, is that Zach, is that you have adapted to the new way of doing things, which is good.
Oh, well, I tell you, and
Okay,
you know this better than me.
on different
We
devices
had
now,
no
so
choice.
We can hear you better. So let's see what happens here. Okay.
I still hear a language that's very, very special. At any rate, Neil, I want
Here we
to.
go. Now,
So now, Neil, get rid of your old one.
go. Is this any better?
You're much, much better now.
Oh man, what
Exactly.
did you turn off your radio?
I went to my phone rather than my computer, and
Much
I'm
better,
loving what's
man.
going on right now.
No, so
I'm
Neil,
getting to
let's
see
so Zach, hold on. Neil, let's go back to that question I asked you because there was something
Okay.
you were saying about being virtually, the movie theater being able to come back, and film festivals. And I'll tell you what's going on my end with that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, you know, as Zach threw out there, we had planned on doing a tour of comedy clubs where we'd show the film, we'd do a funny intro, and then we had a kind of funny Q&A that we did that we tested out in a few clubs, both in New York and LA. Of course, with the COVID, that got closed down. Zach had the idea, let's get this out on VOD. It's time. And now more people are seeing it on VOD than would have seen it on a barnstorming tour. That having been said, to your question, I recently produced this sort of experimental short film that was lined up to go to a lot of festivals, and those festivals have all gone virtual. Though the ones in Europe, where they kind of did a proper lockdown and then opened up again, this film was able to play in a theater in Paris 2 weeks ago to an actual audience. So I'm hoping in the near future we'll get back to that in America. At the same time, I think people are experiencing the idea of, if they're not seeing it virtually at a festival, these festivals are doing drive-in theaters where they have people come and watching it on a big screen from their car, or they're setting up a screen on a hillside at night where people are watching the film. And I think in some way it's kind of flipping a switch as people experience movies in a way that they might have experienced them back in 1910 or back in some different period. And I think people kind of took the whole movie theater going experience for granted. And I think when theaters open up again, there's going to be a lot of excitement for people to go to festivals, go to theaters. And I hope that sooner rather than later.
I agree, and I hope you understand that Paris is closed down now for those.
I know that 2 weeks that this film of mine played there was an anomaly. And
yes, and you didn't mention, which I think is one of the most important things about what's happening now. It has to do with relationships.
Yeah.
So people are now staying together because they're afraid to go out. And they have a wonderful, wonderful growth together, which I didn't have the opportunity when I was traveling as a man that age.
Yeah.
So it makes things happy. I think we're going to have a big rise in the population as this thing propels itself. And how do you feel about that, guys?
Well, I think, Zach,
here's what I've been saying. I'm saying this is going to be around for 5 years. Telecommunications is the new way of seeing things and what we're doing. And I say the earlier you can adapt and adjust to the new change, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I've been saying this for 2 years. I started saying this October 3rd of 2018. And I was working with Greg Lemley, the Lemley Theaters, which is what your movie would have probably have played at, because this is that independent. And I love the independent things. My job is to help those filmmakers get the word out, whether it's music, whether it's social media, whether it's smart technology. And like I said, I saw it coming. I wasn't surprised. It's not going away for 5 years. And what you two doing right now, this is the new way of doing stuff. It's
unbelievable. And I've never heard anybody say what you just said. 5 years.
Because they weren't listening to you. No one else was saying it. That's why.
It's unbelievable. Well, you got it, man. That's right.
I mean, I've been on record saying that when I went to Tennessee, when I was testing stuff. I did what you guys did with this film, going to Tennessee, Franklin, Tennessee, and getting 3.8 million views out of there a day and counting. And then, taking women on TV, doing what we're doing social media. This is 29th straight week of doing Zoom interviews. We've been able to get 1 million, we're almost at 1.2 million on our YouTube. So again, having you filmmakers, you actors, you producers on here, that's very, very important for us. We have to spread as you guys know.
When you mentioned Tennessee, it actually changed my life, because I went to Tennessee when I was 17, and I came across a world I had never seen before, because I grew up in Boston. I went to Vanderbilt University. And it was some new world. And I learned the most important thing in my life at 17. And I learned that people did things for reasons. I followed a girl into the theater one day, and I named all the theaters I worked. Of course, it was all the nightclubs I had worked. And then I did a play, and I walked across the stage, and the director said to me, "Why did the character do that?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "What was the reason?" The man went across it, and boy, that's our life. What's our reason for doing these things? And you came up with that 5 years, which I never heard before today. It changes everything. Because if you have that kind of overview and overlook, it grows in every direction. Is that right or
Oh,
wrong?
we're doing quite well. I couldn't be happier. My issue is you can only help so many people. And like I said, it's not like I hadn't started reaching out in 2013, 2014 to Regal theaters. Where are they? Knoxville, Tennessee. Where are we? 3.8
Wow.
views out of Tennessee alone. So they weren't listening to me. Where are they now? Where's AMC theaters? What did you guys have to do? It's about virtual. I'm helping, and we're doing the Greek theater right now. I'm doing Southern Women in Film and Television right now this weekend in Tennessee. I'm doing a Blank Festival, all virtual because they worked with me.
Now, Sebastian, let me ask you something, because I'm having this experience of there's some people who there's no way I would ever be communicating with. Because of this, you send them an email or a DM on Instagram, and all of a sudden you have a relationship with a writer, a critic, a journalist, a fellow filmmaker that would have been impossible before. And then on the same time, you have people who are your age who get so nervous about somebody reaching out online that you say, geez, you know, they think everything's going to go back to normal in like 84 hours, but they keep keeping that 84-hour window each week that life goes on. And you're saying, gee, why is this person just saying, hey, what do you got going? Let's talk about it. We're in the twilight zone. The world we know has stopped. Let's communicate. So it's very interesting for a guy like me, who's completely technophobic, to sort of take this opportunity to jump in a little bit, interact with people, and finding there's all these people I've met that I never would have met before had this not have happened.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying, except, yeah.
Well, Zach, I was going to say this. There would have been a chance that we might have met at a red carpet event just briefly, because you guys would have been interviewers, and I'm interviewing you guys, and then we may not have seen each other. So now you get a chance to see what we're all doing in a different way. So we didn't stop the pandemic. We were 3 times as busy because, again, I saw it all coming, and I knew we only had so much time to put all this stuff together. And then when everything was shut down, we weren't.
Unbelievable.
Everybody was like, what do we do now? And I'm like, this is what you do. Telecommunication, cleaning supplies. You help those independent filmmakers. You help those actors who are going to need it by doing interviews with them. It's not what they don't have to talk about. It's what their past started with.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you, tell the audience where you guys came from. Because Zach, you make me laugh every time.
Wow.
And Neil, when you got Ed Lauter in one of their films, this guy has always played the rich dad in something. You know what I mean? He's the guy that you always want to see at the end of the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's always like the bad guy in every movie. And one of the reasons he did the movie is almost all the actors in the film are either people we knew or people who are 1 degree of separation from people we knew. So I knew Alan Garfield, and then Alan Garfield knew all these people from the Actors Studio, like Manu Tupu, who plays Chief Zabu, like Mariana Hill. He knew all these people. He was working with them. Well, Ed Lauter, we were saying, who should play this crazy rich guy? And we saw his picture, and we called his agent just cold. And before we got halfway through, the agent said, he'll do the movie. And we said, well, you haven't even seen the script. Why will he do the movie? And he said, because nobody knows that Ed Lauter started as a stand-up comedian, but nobody will cast him in a comedy. When he hears you're calling him for a comedy, he's going to do it. And he came and had a great time with us.
Well, as you know, it's about acting, right? You know, who's Zach?
Yeah.
You say that you can't play a serial killer. It's about acting. You say that you can't do voiceovers. You can. You're supposed to be able to do anything. I'm not that actor. My job is to help promote what you guys do. And
but everything you say makes you an actor, because consciousness, awareness, makes you an actor, and you'd be a great actor. It would come
I was
right
good.
out
I was
from inside.
literally going to say the same thing. You know, not that you want to be running around doing auditions, but if somebody says to you, Sebastian, hey, I'm doing a little movie, jump into this role, don't be one of those guys who says, no, I couldn't do that. You'd surprise yourself,
No,
but you wouldn't surprise us.
You've studied your whole life for this, because the word, my favorite word, is consciousness. And you got it.
Well, here's what
You hear that?
I would always say. I can play myself, but I like voice acting. But my job is to help promote those films. I'm a movie whore. I will always be a movie whore until the day I die. My thing
But
is,
Sebastian, how many parts of you are there? Lots of them. And remember that, man, because that's how it happens. So the pandemic shall eventually, and I hope it's less than the 5 years, but I know it can be. Don't forget about acting, because there's pieces of you that people haven't seen.
Yeah, and also vis-a-vis this little movie that I got involved in, what Zach and I didn't have when we were your age is you and your generation is walking around with a movie studio in your pocket. You know,
That's
for
right.
us, if we wanted to do something, all we had to do always was ask permission. Nowadays, you guys can redefine even what a movie is,
Right.
because you don't have to ask permission.
Take your phone out of your pocket and start shooting.
well, and there was a movie called Tangerine that did really, really well, and he did it. Now, he didn't want to hype that he shot it on an iPhone because he didn't want to take away from the movie process, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
And it all took around forward right around La Brea and Santa Monica Boulevard at that donut place right on the corner that the one actor owns now. It used to be a pink little thing. It's pink. Danny Trejo owns it now. At that donut place, and it all took place there. It was really good. It was called Tangerine. Shot on an iPhone 5.
Right.
Wow.
But it goes back to this.
Well,
Let me ask you this. What do you want the world to see when it comes to re-releasing your film, seeing this years later? What do you two hope to get out of seeing this from the audience?
Oh, I've gotten out of it what I dreamt about, and what it is we just don't know what things are going to be. The last thing that I could ever imagine is that the guy we were portraying in this movie, the lead movie that Alan plays, would become the president of the United States. So what my dream is to reflect what's happening, what you're seeing is what we did. And from my head, I always loved the comedy, that part of it. But that's the dream. What are you seeing today? Where it goes, anybody knows. I'm mind boggled that that's what happened to this picture. It's not that we were geniuses and that let's do this picture now because that's the guy that's going to be president. No, but that's what happened. So when I look at this and people look at it, I'm mind boggled by what we did. Don't you feel that way, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, what I'm loving that we're getting out of it is here's a movie we made in 15 days. We were too nutty not to realize we were perhaps over ambitious, having a movie in 15 days that was going to have 43 speaking roles and 23 locations and 3 cities on 2 continents. And what I hope to get out of it is that some people enjoy this ride, and some younger people also just say, I could try something. Let me not be frightened by my ambition or by my dream. Zach and I we went and made a movie, and when it didn't get released, it didn't crush our lives. We moved on, and then we came back to something, and now we're having the most fun with it that we ever could have had.
Exactly right. And the other thing is what you said is so important, that you said there are things in your head And I'm not talking about you, Neil, even though they're on the camera with you.
Well, they're rattling around.
I see. But the point is, we all have a conscious and a subconscious. Let it go, man. Let it feel. Let's start thinking about what our dreams are. And I, as a kid growing up, couldn't dream that I'd be in movies and on television and all that stuff. But it happened. But it couldn't happen unless I let it happen. And that's what everybody's got to do. Open themselves up and understand that why not me? Why can't I do it too?
And
Make
there's
sense?
something and there's something I just want to take off on that Sebastian did say about himself. And it's about the pleasure you get helping people who somehow and sometimes don't know how to help themselves. So you're trying to promote people's small films. You're trying to promote their artistry, whether there is a writer, a director, somebody trying to run a film festival and being lost at this moment. The idea that you're jumping in with your good vibe and great enthusiasm and doing that, oddly enough, is something that everyone doesn't actually understand. And I'm sure you're not always thanked for that. But I want to take a second and say a lot of people do understand and do thank you. And sometimes they don't even know how to thank you. So it's a very wonderful world that you're building here with what you're putting out.
And I go one below that and say, those people, never mind that are doing what they're doing, those people that aren't doing what they should be doing. And they can think about that they can do it if they want to do it.
Exactly.
That's a different, yeah.
There's so, you guys are icons. And when it comes to that, who's there to replace you? There isn't any Siskel and Ebert anymore. There is no Gene Shalit anymore. There's no Rex Reed anymore. There's very, very few of us. I counted. I think there's 15 of us left. It's not enough. And I'm helping. I remember David Shan. I tell David, we got to do a show based on what you used to do when you were on, what was he on, CBS or NBC, one of the two. I want George, my friend. We got to talk about movies because you can't go out there and do red carpets. You can't go out to a theater right now. It really isn't safe. And I've taken a test. I got about 2 minutes left. I've asked 85 people. 84 out of the 85 people will not go into a movie theater. Why? Because they know it's not safe. So that's the best way to promote the films and put it on all those different devices.
Yep.
One quick question. Where did you grow up, Sebastian?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Yeah. Okay.
I grew up in an all-white town in East Lyme, Connecticut, with Lyme disease.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? And when did you start to think the way you're thinking now? Certainly not in Connecticut as a little boy.
Actually, believe it or not, my sophomore year in high school, the things I came up with, I don't know, I still don't really know how or why, but everything was fine then. I knew I was going to be in radio. I knew I was going to be going to California. I didn't want to go to New York because I always thought there was going to be problems in New York. How did I know that my sophomore year in high school? I don't know.
Spectacular.
Intuitive knowing.
I know how I learned at 17. I followed that tall girl into the theater.
Into Tennessee.
That's it, man.
You couldn't have told me.
I never even heard the word Tennessee.
You couldn't have told me 2 years ago that I was going to take our show outside California, go to Franklin, Tennessee, not Nashville, Franklin, build a green screen the night before, do 6 shows in one day, and then it was August 4th of 2018. Well, that's exactly 2 years ago and 2 months. 3.8 million out of Tennessee alone.
Well, that is so great, man. That is unbelievable. Before these seconds go out, I want everybody to know you've named the platforms, but they should also see Chief Zabu if they want to understand a little bit more about the presidency. Even though he ends up not the president, you'll see what I mean.
Zach, your last words?
My last words is thank you, and I'm not kidding. What a pleasure.
Neil, your last words?
It's like I got a new friend. I dig it. It's wonderful.
Hey, I
A
challenge
great
you.
show, and thank you.
I got about 60 seconds. If you guys feel like it, I will invite you guys to our private studio where I only have 7 people in there, and 5 of them are in the studio, and that includes my engineer, to talk about your legacies of what you guys are doing and where you're going from here.
Man, I'd love it because I just like to be in front of people, with people, communicate. As much as this is great, in person is the goods for me.
I've got a location, I've got it set in 4 states cross country: Tennessee, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Tyler
Wow.
Studios in Georgia. I set it
Wow.
up. We're okay.
Wow.
Thank you guys. I want to thank Neil Cohen. I want to thank Zack Norman. This is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Women on TV.tv, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and the Worldwide TV Network. And with the smiles that these guys on, if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because the world needs it. Right, gentlemen?
You got
Right?
it, man.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank
What
you
a
guys. We
pleasure.
will see you next week.
And if I
hope so.
messed up your name, sorry.